Hello, hello, and welcome back to Girl We Gotta Talk. Today I'm joined by Sarah Hearon. She works for Us Weekly, where she constantly gets to interview celebrities. She walks red carpets and she hosts her own podcast called Here for the Right Reasons, where she interviews all of the Bachelor celebs and gives us all of the information that we need to know. So I think it is only right that we have her on today's episode to help us break down what we saw Monday night. We're going to talk about just the latest Bachelor season in general, what's to come, all of it. So Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so happy to have you. I feel like you're in the know, you know everything. And I feel like you're just as passionate about this as I am. So I'm pumped.
Yes, I mean, Bachelor Nation, it requires passion. It really does.
It's a commitment for sure. Cool. So just before we jump into everything, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself a little bit better and talk a little bit about what you do for work.
Yeah, for sure. I have been at Us Weekly for 3.5 years, which is crazy to me. I am an associate editor, so I write for the site and I also help edit and produce other stories for the site and help kind of run things behind the scenes. And around this time last year, it was towards the end of Peter's season. And we started doing Here for the Right Reasons on YouTube as a YouTube show and as a podcast, which has been so super fun. And Matt's season was a journey, as we know. And I also do Us Weekly's Hot Hollywood podcast, which is like a news podcast. And I found myself always talking about The Bachelor. So then they were like, let's just spin it off. And that's how we ended up here. And yeah, it's really fun.
I love that for you. Oh my gosh. What got you interested in even doing this to begin with?
I always joke that I was like every basic girl who wanted to be Juliana Rancic. And I think, we can all relate to that. I have always loved TV. I love celebrities. I mean, my mom would get People magazine every week since I can remember. And when Twitter happened and everything, I just remember diving deep into it. And I found myself, it's all I could talk about was like celebrities and what was going on and reading celebrity memoirs. And I loved TV and teen dramas. And I wanted to do it so bad. And I always wanted to be a journalist because of like, the Rory Gilmore of it all. And it was just like pop culture was influencing me more than I even realized. And when I went to college, I was a journalism major for a hot minute. And then I had a panic attack and didn't think I'd ever get a job. So I became a communications major to broaden my skills. And I kind of planned on going into social media or more PR, but like secretly on the side, I was always writing and trying to send in freelance samples or blog or whatever and find a way to make it work. And then when I graduated, I was lucky enough that Us Weekly was hiring and I, was 22 and kind of willing to do anything. So that's a huge part of it. And now I've been able to grow a lot.
That's awesome. I'm literally the same way. I grew up with the same like influences, I think. It's funny that you say the Roy Gilmore because I remember growing up and being like, oh my God, like that is such a cool job to have. And Juliana Rancic, all of it. Like I'm the same way. I feel like there are so many people like us out there that are like, oh my God, I would love to do that. But a lot of people are afraid to like put themselves out there. And like you said, you were 22 and you were just like, I'm willing to do it. Like, let's just do it. What has been like the coolest experience that you've had so far with your job?
Oh, I'm going to go with the tie between BravoCon. I know we're talking about The Bachelor, but I'm a big Bravo girl
Mhm.
myself. And BravoCon was the craziest 3 days ever. It was just, there was like over 100 Bravo celebrities there. And also, even like sitting with some of the press people that I have been reading forever of different outlets was cool too for me on that red carpet. They did like a big Watch What Happens live that Friday of BravoCon, and they had every single celebrity come through on the carpet, from Andy to, the Beverly Hills housewives who were filming their season at the time, to the Vanderpump kids who were all like not speaking. So I felt like I was watching an episode of that show. Like Kristen and Stassi were like hiding from each other. Like it was so wild to watch that all play out in real time. And then it was also just really fun, all the panels and stuff and the events. And then I literally just got back last night. I'm very tired. Luckily, you can't see the bags under my eyes since you're listening to this. But I was just at Nemacolin, the Bachelor Resort, for the last 4 days doing this like finale experience. And I got to do like all the stuff they did on the show and did a big watch party. And I mean, maybe it's just because it's fresh in my mind, but it was one of the cooler things I've done, especially in the last year.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. First of all, BravoCon, like I would die. And like that's so funny that you're like Kristen and Stassi like aren't talking and like you're seeing it in real life. Like that is
Yeah.
so cool. I feel like BravoCon, like they should have been doing this a long time ago. Like this was like Yes, they were late to the game, but they like succeeded and everyone was like obsessed. I think it went so well. Like I'm so excited for the next BravoCon.
Yeah, it'll
Um,
happen again for
yes,
sure.
hopefully. And that's so cool. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that because I saw that you were there and it was like real time almost because you were literally watching the finale in the place where they are. Like that's such a cool experience. So
It was meta.
what was that like?
Oh my God. Well, we got there on Saturday and they just like it, that resort is it's next level and it looked big on the show. I mean, especially after we just watched the Claire and Tasha pour like into Inn where they only filmed in the one corner because apparently half of that resort was under construction, which they didn't even tell us, which is why I think we really felt like we saw one spot in that Palm Springs resort. But Nemacolin is like 3,000 acres and it's in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and the whole like town kind of like operates like a lot of people work there are like locals and it's been open for a while and they all were like this big family and it was just honestly it was truly like a magical place and I maybe it's just because they rolled out the VIP carpet treatment for us but I went in a helicopter. I went on like an off-roading tour. I had a massage. Like it was like all the fun stuff. And then obviously the finale party, they just like went over the top. Like I can't even explain to you how many roses there were in my presence. Then Peter the pilot showed up. Like it was just a bizarre, weird whirlwind couple of days, but it was very meta to be watching the finale sitting in one of the rooms that they like had the dates in. It was cool.
It literally seems like you got the Bachelor experience minus the drama. Like you got all of it.
Yes.
I can't believe you got like a massage, the helicopter ride. I love that for you. That is so fun.
Yeah, it was cool.
So let's just jump into all of that because I feel like this season was a whirlwind. It was, I think a lot of people were really, really excited that it was going to be Matt, somebody that was new to all of this. So I think he just had like a lot of love coming in because we were like, okay, like you got this, you're new to it. Like we're excited to see who you are as a person. And we kind of, I think a lot of people got a little glimpse of him being friends with Tyler C, but this was like obviously a way deeper version of that. So, what are your thoughts on like the overall season?
Oh my God. I mean, it's crazy because I remember when they announced Matt, which I think almost part of the problem was it was announced so long ago in June
Yeah.
and there was so much buildup. And I feel like people almost wrote off like Tasha, because especially everything that happened with Claire, it was like, oh God, what's going on? Like that was a mistake. And then the confusion and people were really ready for Matt. So I think there was a lot of hype. And then and now looking back after of hindsight is 2020, I feel like the Tasha Claire season actually went so much smoother and provided the perfect amount of love and drama and ridiculousness that we love about the show. Whereas Matt's season, it was over the top because the resort was bigger and better. And, you know, it was the first Black Bachelor. There was a lot of stakes, but I almost feel like that worked against them. Whereas people went into the Claire Tasha thing thinking it was going to be a disaster and it was actually kind of fun. It was a disaster, but in a fun way, a reality TV way, whereas this turned into a disaster in kind of the not so fun way. And while I think it's going to end up doing a lot of good for the franchise, because there were things that were probably going to come out or happen anyway, it took a lot of fun out of the show. And the love stories were lost already. And before we even knew they broke up because of the emphasis on the drama. And then the Matt of it all, I think he's a really great guy, and every interaction I've ever had with him, anyone I've spoken to has nothing but nice things to say about him. But I think that almost worked against him being the Bachelor. Not that other Bachelors are bad people by any means. I have not had a bad experience with the Bachelor lead, but I think that going on the Bachelorette or having any sort of understanding of what you're getting into is more important than we all thought. Because I was all for the refreshing take too, and I think that it almost worked against Matt as we saw during the finale with that light switch of, oh, now that he saw his family and he got out of the bubble, he was like, what the hell am I doing here? Kind of.
Yeah, I think there was like a naive aspect to him being the Bachelor. And yes, we were like excited for the refreshing newcomer. But I think, yeah, he was in that bubble for so long and he was like, okay, well, I'm going through the motions and this is what I'm supposed to do. And this is what everyone's telling me I'm supposed to do. And then, yeah, like I think the moment when he saw his mom and his brother and they got that reality check, he was like, wait, what am I doing here? Like, how did I, first of all, even get here? Like, I think it just like really pushed him back from all of it. And yeah, this season was definitely interesting. It's funny that we were like, yeah, everyone like really crapped on Claire's season and Tayshia's season. And we are kind of like, okay, that wasn't as bad as like we maybe thought it was because of what we dealt with this season. It was weird how I think we had drama outside of what we were watching. We had real life drama that was affecting what we were watching. And yeah, like you said, it was affecting our opinions on the love stories that were actually happening. Like we had all of these preconceived notions about Rachel before he knew. And it was just a weird dynamic that I don't think we've really had in a long time. And I also feel like this season was a little rough with the ladies. And I wanted to get your take on the drama and the bullying that happened this season, because I was talking to some friends about this a while ago and I said, these women have to be just so excited to be out of quarantine and out of this like COVID world. They are now in this castle on TV with like a bunch of new people looking for love. Like this has to just be such a cool experience for them. You know, they're probably so excited and happy, but yet there's all this drama, there's negativity, there's bullying going on. And it was like the opposite of what I thought or how I thought they would act. So what was your take on like all the bullying and the negativity on this season?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so much there. I think it's quarantine definitely played a part in all of this. Everyone was like ready to go and they all came out swinging. And I think that it was so much buildup again with the historic first Black Bachelor, with this castle, with everything that was happening. I think a lot of them were in their heads. They all came out swinging. Victoria is just a wild human, I think, in general. I do believe that that's how she is. I think there's also something to be said for when you're sarcastic on a show, it doesn't always play well. And the edit does affect things, because I talked to Brie on Here for the Right Reasons this week, and she was telling me how it was, there was definitely some toxicity in the house. There was some negativity, but in her experience, it didn't outweigh all the positives. It was kind of more balanced. So there were certain days that were crazy and other days that weren't. And I think the show made a clear decision to edit out any redeeming qualities about these women,
Yeah.
which was a choice that I don't think was a smart one, because there was obviously a lot of drama that we needed to unpack. But then if you see someone like Sarah, who was the biggest drama for the first couple weeks, and then she's not even at the Women Tell All, so they're not even going to give us our like resolution to her. What was the point of that? And it's also with Bachelor viewers, like we always want what we can't have. At least I'm like this. Like, so now I'm complaining that I didn't get to see enough love stories, but if I didn't get to see the drama, I'd be pissed about that too. So it's a delicate balance, but I think they've done it right before. Like I go back to, I remember like Nick Vile's season, there was a decent amount of drama. You had Corinne, you had Taylor, things played out. But Vanessa apparently and Rachel Lindsay like hated each other and got into some big thing off camera that we never even saw. So as a viewer, that annoyed me. And to this day, I want to know the details. It almost made sense because we needed the love story. We needed the Nick and Vanessa. We needed also Rachel, who was going to be our bachelorette. Like they needed to look good. And the drama was elsewhere. But with this, they didn't make anyone look good really until the end, when it was like, wait, why do I care who's still on the show? I just spent weeks trying to figure out what was happening with people who are now leaving. You know what I mean? Like it was just edited poorly in my opinion. And I don't usually say that. I'm usually giving the producers and editors the credit for the reality TV, because it's a lot of work. But I thought there was just too many missteps with it, because I'm sure there was drama 100%, but there was definitely redeemable qualities about these women too.
Totally. I completely agree with that. I think obviously we know as a viewer of The Bachelor that like this is an edited show. This is reality TV. Not everything that we are watching is how it actually happened. And I know that going in, but I completely agree. I think this season was over edited and there were a lot of like missteps, like you said, that like, wait a minute, that didn't really line up. And like, why are we seeing this and we didn't see this? It was a very odd edit. Like I didn't really understand. And the Sarah thing is important to note. And like the Heather thing coming in and like them not, Heather being on the Women Tell All, but Sarah not even being there. And I thought there were a lot of girls not in the Women Tell All that I think sometimes does happen, but I felt like Sarah was one of those people that we wanted to see, we wanted to hear from. And yeah, I mean, it's just a weird experience. And I'm wondering like why that happened. Someone else I want to talk about along with the edits is Katie, because I've heard a couple different things and I want to get your opinion on it. So we as viewers, I think, love Katie. Like we saw Katie really like come to Matt's defense. And I thought it was a very smart way that she went about it. Like she saw drama in the house and instead of making a big scene and causing drama within the women, she went to Matt separately, like low key, and said, hey, this is what's happening. Maybe you should address it, because I don't want to start anything. I thought that was so smart. I was like, why hasn't someone done this before? This is beautiful. Like, thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
And I think there's been talk that she wasn't as liked in the house as much as I think the producers were trying to make it seem. And I guess that's because they did want her to be the Bachelorette, which I think a lot of people were kind of expecting after her like superhero, like, moves in the house. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's because of the edit and like we're not actually seeing the person that she is, or what are your thoughts?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I
I know.
think it's both. So first I'll just say there is something to be said for the Bachelorette edit. Now they don't always know obviously so soon who's going to be the choice. We've heard stories of people claiming they're getting on the plane and the next morning they turn on GMA and see it's someone else. Like it's definitely a very fluid situation. That's what's happening with Chris Harrison right now. There haven't been any decisions made because they don't know the decision. Like it's all always changing. It's obviously a very, popular franchise with a lot of people's opinions, makes a lot of money for ABC and a lot to unpack. With The Bachelorette, though, I do know, there are examples of other women who they've decided were going to be the Bachelorette early, and they edited stuff out. It's no, if I don't know, it's not a secret, but it's not really talked about on Colton's season. Hannah Brown like crashed his hometown and wanted to like talk to him, and I don't think she came off looking very great in that moment. And then we didn't see that because Hannah Brown, was going to be our Bachelorette and she was going to be our badass lead. And I think that there are certainly parts to her. I'm not saying they take the lead and, construct them and they're taking away their personality. There's total truth to what they're showing us, but everyone has several sides. And they put their best foot forward for the person who's going to lead the franchise into the next season. It makes sense. I feel like Claire's the example of someone who we saw be really messy. And then because they brought her back, so she didn't have that same experience necessarily. But a lot of times they are, curating a little bit of the narrative that they want you to know about their lead. That's just what the show is. With Katie specifically, I think it's a balance. I certainly think they had, she seems to be a really headstrong, smart, great girl. And I think it was probably on her to, say this is ridiculous. Like these women should be embarrassed for their behavior. And I think there's truth to that. But I also think, the women, I get why people always get frustrated when they go to the lead. It's kind of like the trope of the show, the trying to use the drama to get more attention. Watching the series, I didn't get that from Katie, and I actually really liked her. And I thought, oh, she is really just like, this house is so miserable. And she didn't seem to be taking advantage of the time with Matt, the extra time with Matt. But then watching the women tell all, I was just confused. And I feel like there's more to the story. I also was shocked that the women weren't more, remorseful after watching the show. So that makes me feel like it really didn't play out that way. But I also know that they didn't make all this up. Like there's truth to things that happened. So that's a long way of saying I don't know the answer to your
Yeah.
question, but I think there's truth to all of it, if that makes any sense.
Totally. No, and I'm with you on that. I think there's truth to both sides, and it's just a matter of like what we saw versus what actually happened, and we will never really know.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the finale went Monday night, it was a long 3 hours, I have to say. Like I really felt like we could have just I saw a tweet where it was like this could have just been like a quick email. Like I didn't feel like there was a lot of content in those 3 hours. But I wanted to get your takes on Matt's mother. So she seemed like such a sweet woman. She was emotional with both Michelle and Rachel, which a lot of times I feel like we don't see. I feel like right off the bat, you can kind of tell what parent likes what person, right? Like they have a little
Totally.
favorite and they kind of like hint towards that person. Do you think that she had a favorite?
That's a good question. I really genuinely think that Patty liked both of them. And I think she liked seeing Matt happy. I really think it just like turned into this like moment of the engagement of it all and the weight of what this show means. And obviously, like this family has been through a lot. And maybe it's just because they had to talk about it on the show, but it felt like there was trauma for both Matt and his mom and his father and family stuff that needed to be worked out, not on camera, that really bled into the finale. But maybe it's just because it was like opening old wounds and it's not like they go through their everyday life like crying about something like this and this show was a trigger or something. Because I agree with you. I mean, like we just came off of Barb last season who made it very
Yeah.
clear that she hated Madison. And we've seen that happen plenty of times and it affects the lead's decision, or so it seems. And this was an example of she liked both the girls. She got emotional. She seemed to like them. But then the second they were gone, it was like, are you sure you want to pick one? Like it was very confusing, honestly.
Yeah. I think, yeah, they have a lot of there's a weird dynamic with the family, and that's totally okay and it's normal. But I think you're
Mm-hmm.
right. I think maybe like being on camera and having to talk about it brought it all back up for everybody because she seemed excited at the beginning to meet them and for this whole experience. And then, yes, as soon as they left, she was like, hold on, this might not be a good idea for you. Like, you have a lot to like deal with on your own. Like, are you ready for another person to come into your life right now and to like commit? And so I think seeing her, I think really set him off, and made him second guess everything, which we saw him like kind of debate. And I think he was like trying to convince himself that he wanted to go through with this. Like you could see him in the interviews be like, I'm like questioning everything, but I'm here for this. And I don't know. It was a confusing episode. And I felt bad for him because like we said before, he is the newcomer. He doesn't know how all this is supposed to go. And I think he was going through those motions and then he's like, wait a minute, like, what am I doing
Yeah.
here?
I genuinely believe he went into the show wanting to believe in the best of the process, opened up his heart, clearly fell in love with Rachel. I think that, there's no denying that, but he, a lot of that real world aspect, you have to think, okay, he psyched himself out. And I think that it's normal to do that. And I also think since I don't know, it's like I just really feel like he's a nice person and I just feel bad for him. I just feel like this all took a turn, and it started with his mom, not in a bad way against his mom, but just like got into his head. And then now to know that he was having those fears, and retroactively watching those episodes, like watching those last couple of days and knowing what we knew now, it was like, oh, you're going to get hurt. Like you should put those walls up, because normally on the show, it works out to some degree, even if they break up, like not something huge traumatic happens, like what happened between them. So it was just sad. You wanted to like warn him not to, even commit to Rachel, but then that's not fair either. Like, I don't know. It was really weird to watch for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw some people comparing him to Juan Pablo, with the whole like non-commitment at the end of it, because obviously he does pick Rachel, but then he doesn't propose and he's like, let's just do this thing like together, which I can respect. Like, I think that that's more normal than what The Bachelor expects of people, right? Like, do people really get engaged after a couple of weeks? No. So I understood, obviously we knew more in the moment watching it, but I was like, okay, like I can understand this. Like, I don't think that he's a Juan Pablo though, because he did love her and he was committing to her. He just wasn't putting a ring on it yet. And I think with a lot of leads that a lot of people don't understand is that this conversation, this like internal conversation definitely happens with everybody. Like, is this the right decision? I'm on this TV show, but like, is this going to be successful in the real world? But Matt was just talking out loud and we like got to see what he was thinking. Like, I think everybody does think about this to an extent and it's not uncommon. And I felt bad for him and I was like, like I want to help you because you don't know what you're doing, but also like I know more now. Like it was tough to watch. But do you think that they would have lasted had everything not happened the way it did with the scandal and the antebellum theme party? Like, do you think that they would have been a successful couple?
That's a good question. First, I just need to go back to this Juan Pablo reference because I'm offended on Matt's behalf.
Me
I really
too.
think The Bachelor can be separated in two different circumstances. You have pre-Colton jumping the fence and post-Colton jumping the fence. So pre-Colton jumping the fence, of course, there were messy endings. Juan Pablo didn't pick someone. Brad Womack didn't pick anyone. Or Juan Pablo picked Nikki but didn't get engaged. Brad Womack picked no one. The Ari Becca switch. But I really feel like before those seasons, while they were messy and while there was, not always the typical ending, majority of the time you had the engagement. And I felt like it was because you were on the show, you felt obligated, everyone did it. The second Colton jumped that fence and didn't even finish filming his season with his last couple, we have not really had a normal finale ever since. We had Hannah Brown dump her guy over the cheating stuff. We had Peter with three of his girls. Like no one has really, Claire quitting in 3 weeks. So it's like, The Bachelor, I think, started to lean into it after that happened. So that's why these endings have all been really different, because I don't think there's as much expectation. I think production is down to run with whatever actually happens, versus before there was this pressure to have that fairy tale ending. Even Ari proposing to Becca over Lauren, making the wrong decision and going back to it, it's still like, if he didn't feel such a pressure to propose, maybe he would have thought about it differently. I think there's just something going on behind the scenes that they're ready to lean into the crazy and change it. As far as Rachel and Matt are concerned, I believe to some degree. I mean, I think she's a 24-year-old. He's 29. They clearly weren't ready to get engaged, but it could have worked to their advantage. I mean, we saw Cassie and Colton date for like a year and a half before things went bad there. And I think that there was a genuine love there. I mean, for like that 30 seconds when they were together, I thought it was cute.
I thought it was cute. We got 2 photos and after the final rose of them like together, honeymooning basically. And I was like, okay, maybe I could see it. It seemed like the scandal obviously happened like immediately, like right after they got off the show, which really took a turn in their relationship. And after the final rose, it was really awkward to watch. It was super uncomfortable. Emmanuel Acho came on and he hosted, and I thought he did a great job. And he's used to the uncomfortable conversations. That's what he does. And I thought he handled it really well. I think people were uncomfortable, but there was a reason that you should be uncomfortable, because this is uncomfortable and it had to be talked about. It was strange to watch them together. But what were your takes on like the dynamic between them? And Matt was like silent. Matt could barely talk. And he just like had this like look of like, he was drained and like just disappointed. But what were your thoughts on like their dynamic?
I totally agree. I mean, uncomfortable as promised, as needed. I think that there was a lot of different audiences that needed to be served during this. You had, people of color and fans of the franchise, the contestants who were just like really upset and disappointed and didn't know if they wanted to even watch the show anymore. And then you had, white viewers who are trying to navigate what their part should be in this, trying to understand people who love Chris Harrison, friends of Chris Harrison. There's just so many aspects of it. And I think Emmanuel Acho was amazing and asked the perfect amount of questions about like the show, like the typical show like questions, and questions about race and everything that happened. Matt and Rachel, it was tough. I think it's still pretty fresh. From everything I know, the breakup happened in the towards middle end of February, and this was filmed like a week ago. So it had only been a couple weeks, and we know that, and he said this, and this is stuff we've all heard, that he, tried to stand by her, and he said they were rumors. And, when everything first started, it was like random TikToks of girls in her grade, like accusing her of being racist. And you can't take that as fact. Like that would be crazy if he did. But then when those pictures came out and stuff, it was tough. And it sounded like they had some okay conversations about it. And then something turned for him. And that's his prerogative as the lead, the first Black Bachelor, as a Black man, as a man in general, to be like, I don't feel comfortable with the way you handled this. And I felt sympathy for her too. You could tell she was going into it. She looked really skinny. She looked defeated too. She was like putting her hand on his shoulder, trying to comfort him. And I almost felt like she was hoping maybe the door was open. The door was closed for him. And I think they were all just trying to get through it. But they also knew, I think especially Matt knew, this platform that he's been given is huge. And he wanted to use it, but at the same time, he's like, this is not what I signed up to do. And he's trying to balance his own mental health with this new platform. And I think the same for Rachel. I mean, she is now kind of in this spot where she can turn this around and make it positive, but she's never going to please everyone. She's in a weird situation too. So they're both like just trying to say the right thing, but also I believe we're genuinely mourning their relationship and what could have been on this national platform. I mean, it's heavy for everyone involved.
Yes, I completely agree with everything you just said. Rachel's appearance definitely looked, I just felt bad. Like she's definitely like lost a lot of weight. I'm sure she's had so much anxiety with all of the situation. I mean, the whole country is talking about her and talking about this and upset with her. And I can't imagine like what that does to you. And yeah, I think she did think the door could still be cracked, something like she had the hand on the shoulder. She was comforting, and she did seem uncomfortable, but there was like a calmness about it and like a comfortability when she was talking to like Emmanuel. She said something about when he asked her what she was doing, she kind of was like laughing and trying to make it a joke as to be like, I could say that I'm watching like YouTube videos and listening to podcasts. And she tried to make it a little bit lighter because I think she was hoping that everyone would just move on after this. And I don't know. I think, yes, the dynamic was off. Matt had said on After the Final Rose, I think it was, where he was, standing by her at the beginning. He was trying to figure it out. He had only heard rumors, and TikToks are not real sources. Like we have seen TikToks ruin people's lives, but then people are like, wait a minute, that wasn't accurate at all. And so I think, he was standing by her, but she had mentioned something on After the Final Rose where she said, yes, I knew these pictures were out there. I knew that they existed, and I didn't worry about it. I didn't even think that this would be an issue. And then Matt had said, well, that's like really disheartening. That's super disappointing that you would even say that. And I think it just like all came right back up again. Like he was probably ready to just put this to bed, and her saying that kind of like set him off a little bit. And I think that's where the silence came from. And he was just dealing with it internally all over again. And I just feel bad. I feel bad for both parties. I think this situation is tough in general, just a breakup on national television, but the extent of everything that's going on makes it even worse. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Where do you see both of them moving forward?
Oh, I mean, I've been saying this a lot on my podcast Here for the Right Reasons, and it's about The Bachelor and in anything. I mean, we're in a weird spot right now, whereas when people apologize for past mistakes, it's like this weird judge and jury of us being to be like, we forgive you or prove what you're doing. And I don't know what the answer to that is. And I'm not the person to decide either as a white woman. And it's just a bizarre situation. And I don't, as a society, there has to be maybe a middle ground of what to do. But I think Rachel will be okay. I think, she got 500,000 Instagram followers out of this whole ordeal. Not that that's what's important, but it does give her a platform, and what she chooses to use that platform for is up to her. I would assume she would want to lay low for a while and maybe, figure out her next move. I don't know what her status is with her like actual job or what any of that is, because who knows? I mean, we've seen people come out of like the Big Brother house and lose their job for things they said on the show. And this is a whole other different level of attention that it got in the media. I know she's close with her family, so hopefully she has a strong support system around her. Everyone I've talked to from the season, including Matt, have said that Rachel's a good person. They don't want her to be canceled. They don't want her to whatever. So I think that hopefully there's a strong support system around her and she can figure out what her next move is. And if that is something, and being a public figure, that's going to be up to her to decide what she wants to share of this journey, what she feels comfortable talking about. And I mean, I think it's going to be really interesting. Matt, I feel like, is going to run as far away from the reality TV cameras as possible. Maybe I'm wrong. He tweeted about therapy. I think that's a good idea for everyone involved and everyone ever. Big fan. And I would assume I don't think he regrets this. And I don't think he could ever say that, but I think he's got a lot to work through, that things before the show, on the show, watching the show, now that it's all over, and he's going to wake up and be like, I don't have any media appearances. I don't have anything I have to do. And I just have to deal with all of this, because they've been through it. But my gut tells me it's not like we're going to see Matt James run around paradise or, anything like that anytime soon. I don't think he has any interest in that.
Absolutely not. He is, I'm sure, so over it. I mean, like, he really gave everything to us. He gave us his heart. He showed us his family, that dynamic with his father, like the scandal after the show, like a breakup on national television. I mean, he wasn't even used to the cameras following him around in general. Like, he had not been through this process before. I think he just needs a break. He needs to just sleep. He needs a therapist. And rightfully so. Like, I don't know where my mental state would be at this point. Like, this is a lot for any person. So hopefully he's doing okay and he can take a minute for himself. And I'm excited to see where he ends up. And he does a lot of great work, not even talking about The Bachelor, just like his day-to-day. Like, I think he'll continue to do that and be successful in that. But yeah, he's a great person. And I feel bad that things played out the way that it did, for sure.
It reminded me, you just said, because they went through the breakup, obviously. And it was actually the first time I feel like a Bachelor couple, I guess with like Jason and Melissa, we didn't see them break up, but they broke up kind of on after the final rose. Like, I know they had conversations and Melissa knew she was going out there and they were on the rocks, but she didn't know they were like over. And this was the first time we've had a breakup off camera that they actually didn't show them, which I think was smart, because if they made Matt film that, I don't think it would have gone well. And I think it would have felt really exploitive. So I think that's something good to note, that the franchise did do well, is that they didn't do that. Because I mean, that Becca Ari breakup unedited was wild to watch. Yeah. On one hand, it gave her the perfect Bachelorette platform. So that's maybe why they all agreed to do it, because it was pushing that forward and that narrative forward. But it just reminded me that it was, it was kind of jarring as a viewer. It felt like there was missing pieces, but I think it was for the mental health of everyone involved. So good job on that one, because I feel like I've been very hard on the show, but they handled that part well.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even think about that, but yes, that was a good move, I think. So after the final rose, we got the announcement of both Bachelorettes that are coming, which are, we've already mentioned Katie, but also Michelle. And I thought this was really interesting. And I was very nervous at first because they were on the couch together and they said it at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, we have another Caitlyn Britt scenario. Like, I hated that. Like, I don't want this again. And it seemed like Michelle also thought that was how it was going to be too originally. But we're getting Katie first, which we've already kind of talked about. And I think it'll be an interesting season. But then we also get Michelle. Like, I think Michelle, I felt really bad when we see Matt break up with Michelle after she does the whole Jersey thing. Like, she's excited for the future. And I think she has the sweetest heart. And honestly, I really wish that Matt had picked Michelle, because I really did feel like they had that connection. Like, I thought they're very, very similar and I thought they would have been really cute. So I felt bad for Michelle, and I was like, justice for Michelle, and this is the justice that she deserves. So I'm excited to see Michelle as a Bachelorette. But what are your thoughts on the two ladies that they picked and how they're doing it this season?
Yeah, I think there's probably more that we don't know about why this all played out. I know there was some reports that Michelle didn't want to miss the rest of the school years, and the
Mhm.
Bachelorette starts filming like next week. Like Katie's already in New Mexico, like they're in the bubble. So if that's what happened, then it makes a little more sense to me because I like Katie. I think she's probably going to be great. They usually know what they're doing when they're picking the leads. She reminds me of Caitlin Bristow and Andy Dorfman a little bit, so it'll be interesting to have Caitlin in there kind of helping guide. And Tasha obviously is our most fresh recent Bachelorette. I think that all makes sense, which will kind of maybe create this girl power dynamic that they're looking for, because it's not just, diversity. People were saying, why has a man been hosting the Bachelorette this whole time to begin with? And that's a good question. I mean, we saw JoJo come in and do a great job talking to Tasha too. So I'm excited for that season just because I think with all the pressure they're under, there's a lot of stuff that's been happening behind the scenes. And even though it's a quick turnaround, which a lot of people are concerned about, I feel like they're going to take everything pretty seriously about what to do. Michelle as a lead overall, I'm much more looking forward to, though. I love her. I think they gave her a great platform to set it up. I mean, I felt like the second we saw their connection, it was she got that first one-on-one after showing up late. It was established, but then as like the weeks kept going and he was only really giving Rachel validation, it was breaking my heart because I was like, Michelle is going to be heartbroken. We saw it coming from a mile away.
Mhm.
And it was I love that she called him out. Again, I like Matt, but I thought it was really interesting that she was like, I just want to talk to you for 2 more minutes and you wouldn't let me. But she did it in a way that was like, I'm over you, but just so you know, like you did that wrong. Like I loved it. I thought it gave her the perfect platform. A lot of times on these after the final rose confrontations between the runner-ups and the winner, it's kind of disappointing because half the time the runner-up is like over it. Like they watch the show back and they're like, oh, like I never stood a chance, or
Yeah.
I dodged a bullet. And other times they're going to be the Bachelorette and they're campaigning for that and they don't even want to like drag it in. And it's very rare for them to actually still have like resentment towards the lead. And not that I want them to, be pining for them, but it makes it more interesting and gives us conclusion. Because I know there's several months between when the show ends and when they do that, but it always feels weird to us because you cut to them crying hysterically. And then if they're all just smiling, it's like, okay, well, did it mean anything to you? So I thought she had like that perfect balance of, she had a little bit of a bone to pick with Matt. She was definitely heartbroken, but she also was ready to move forward and take whatever. So I thought she came off great. I really like her. I think it's great that she's like a teacher. She's a little more down home. Like we got a lot. I think there's a lot to her. I really was hoping for Abigail, and I still hope we see her again. But I really like Michelle.
I completely agree. Yeah, Abigail, I really thought that she was in the running. She probably was, but I would have loved to see her as the Bachelorette too. But Michelle is my girl. Like I love that she's a teacher and she's like a little bit more, yeah, like normal, like down to earth. Like we haven't had that, I feel like, in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we always get the influencers or like the media girls that just like it's a little bit different of a attitude, and I think that Michelle is going to bring like a lot to the table, and I think there's a lot more to her that we don't know. And I loved she was calling him out on the conversation that he would not have with her, but also I love that she was like, and you know what, I hope that you start closing your eyes when you kiss, like, and I was like, yes, Michelle, that is what I love. So I'm
And
really
it made Matt
excited.
look great too because it lightened the mood. He laughed at it. It just showed that these were good people that ended up in like a wild situation. And there's a lot of factors that played out. But I loved that he laughed at that. And I mean, even when Matt was doing media talking about Victoria or Rachel, whoever, he really did try to speak about these women with kindness. And he didn't necessarily have to, because from what we were seeing as viewers, he was dealing with a lot of crazy. But he always wanted to remind people that I saw the real people, they were real people.
Yeah.
And when Michelle, took that little dig, all in good fun, he laughed back. And it felt like just a normal human moment. And we haven't gotten a lot of those on this season.
A normal human moment. Exactly. That is so funny. So, yeah, we kind of mentioned it. Tasha and Caitlin are the new hosts for the seasons of The Bachelorette. What are your thoughts on these two ladies? I personally love these two ladies. I'm obsessed with Caitlin Bristow. I think she is the best energy. Like she is such a fun person. And she has really come a long way from her season. I think she really went through it when she was the Bachelorette, and it was one of the rougher Bachelorette seasons we've seen. And Tasha, also great energy, positive person. I think that these two ladies are like just badass women. And I think what you said with the Katie season, it's going to be a lot of girl power and it's going to be an interesting dynamic to have women as the host and not Chris Harrison. What was your initial reaction when you heard that these were the hosts for next season?
My initial reaction was JoJo Fletcher was unavailable.
Yeah.
And I know now that she's filming a show with Jordan.
Yep.
Just because they had JoJo come in last year and JoJo and Tayshia know each other already because they did she came in for Tayshia's season and they also filmed that date for Matt. So initially I was like, Caitlin kind of came out of left field for me, even though she is still very much associated with the show. She does her podcast. She was just on Dancing with the Stars. My initial thought was it was going to be JoJo and Tayshia. That being said, I think Caitlin is an interesting choice and a smart choice because she has gone through the engagement, the backlash, the breakup, all of it, whereas Tayshia's fresh out of it, still in the love honeymoon phase. And together, it's like one complete what could happen to you as the Bachelorette. Because Caitlin is a rare situation of didn't get married to the guy, but was with him for a really long time. People very beloved. People took sides, very upset when they broke up. It was like a big drama. She also got a lot of heat while the season was airing for Nick and sleeping with someone for the fantasy suite. And she was kind of controversial, which I feel like if that aired now, it wouldn't have been because the Hannah Brown season got a little bit more love on the sex positive stuff. But Caitlin has really been through it and she's more removed, but also still very much in it because of dating Jason. And like I said, Tayshia is fresh out of it and knows, what it's like to be dealing with it in 2020 Bachelor versus 20, however long ago it was, 2016 or 15 when Caitlin was on the show. So I think it's smart. I always say that they know what they're doing. Like I doubt they probably went through a lot of scenarios in their head. And this was a smart decision. And I can't decide what I think is going to happen to Chris Harrison, but I think they're just going to take it one day at a time. And I think it'll be smart.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that they know what they're doing with Chris Harrison. I think that maybe they'll just see how this works and go from there and like make a decision down the line. But yeah, I agree. I think it'll be a very interesting season. It's something new, so it's something exciting for us as viewers to be like, okay, well, this is the first time that we're seeing this happen, and it adds a little bit of spice to the season. So we need a little switch up. I think that moving forward, the Bachelor Bachelorette franchise is going to just try to evolve, and I think that this past season they tried. They have been trying and things did not go as planned or how they thought, I'm sure, but I think that it's moving in the right direction. And so I'm very interested to see how this goes. But yeah, wow, a lot to unpack here today.
Yeah, The
lot of
Bachelor, the content, they don't sleep.
They don't sleep. It is a commitment for sure. But thank you so much for coming on today's episode. And just giving all this insight. It was so fun to like talk to someone just as passionate about all of this as me. So thank you again. Where can people follow you, find you, all of that?
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm at Sarah Hearon, Hearon on Instagram. There is a Bachelor Sarah Hearon, the girl who was on Sean Lowe's season. So I will never get to be the most famous Sarah Hearon, which is my own, cross to bear in life. But if my Instagram is there, I have all the highlights from Nemacolin and all the podcast information here for the right reasons. We do Tuesday recap episodes and Friday bonus little interviews or just like breakdowns of the biggest headlines, what we're hearing on the UsWeekly front. It's going to be, it's hard during the off seasons, but we keep going. We come up with content. And yeah, just read usmagazine.com every day for all your scoop.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely give her a follow. Check out her podcast. She's amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming on. And be sure to follow Girl We Gotta Talk podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and now TikTok. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Bye.